Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 12 o'clock. It's a Sunday, which means it's time for a Q&A where I take all the questions that you've asked over the course of the week on this channel and I try and answer them as well as I can. There are some amazing questions this week, so we're going to get straight into it with the first question. Right, so the first question comes from Andrew Young. Craig, I just started watching your channel after the Michael Rubenstein interview. Thanks very much, Andrew. Been getting through all your videos. They're pure gold. Don't want them taken away. He's talking about the marketing videos. Like I said on last week's Q&A, Andrew, sorry. I'm setting up a new YouTube channel in the new year. It's all going to be about marketing, and I've got some amazing content planned. So this channel is going to be more about magic. Having said that, I am going to be doing some marketing tips on the 5x5 series on a Monday as well. But if you want pure marketing, January, I'll let you know where the new channel is. Anyway, your question. You have two questions. Number one, how do I get a video of your performance if you don't have it already? Is it best to hire someone or have a friend help you out? This is tough when you're first starting. Absolutely. Now, I'm answering this question in depth on 5x5. I've got a future 5x5 planned. I think it's going to be episode 3, and I'm going to answer this in depth. What I will tell you is it's absolutely really easy to get video footage if you know what you're doing. And I'm going to share with you a trick that I use to get literally unlimited video. So look out for that on 5x5. I'm not going to do it here because it's going to take up half the Q&A, but I think I've already planned it. I think it's going to be episode 3 of 5x5. I'm going to go into depth on that question. And the other thing you've said is, should you launch a web page if you don't have these things already? You know what? My attitude is, you want to get a website as soon as possible. Even if you haven't got assets, even if you haven't got social proof, even if you haven't got videos, you want to get yourself a website as soon as possible. Because the website is your front door. It's kind of like if you imagine that you as a magician is a shop. The website is it's the front of your shop. It's what everybody sees. If you haven't got a website, then all you've got is social media, which is fine. There's no problem with social media. But what happens if Facebook decide to close down one day? Then you're in big trouble. And or what happens if people migrate away from Facebook somewhere else? With a website, you are in complete control of that website. And what you can do, and you're right, you might not have photos straight away. You might not have videos straight away. But what you can do is you can blog. It is free to blog. It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't cost anything other than time. And what that will do, well, that will massively help improve the SEO on your website. And I've done videos in the past on SEO, but that will massively help the SEO on your website, which will start having it getting ranked in Google and different search engines, which is really, really important. So yeah, my attitude is, even if it's just a simple one-page website, get a website up as soon as possible. Right, so the next question is by James O'Toole. James, thanks very much for asking the question. Great video again, guys, thank you. Looking for a few easy tricks to teach my 8-year-old. Any recommendations? Well, Ryan has just turned 8, but he isn't your average 8-year-old. He's been doing magic since he was 2 years old, so a lot of the stuff he does wouldn't be appropriate. However, I can talk you through what I did for him when he was younger. And the very first trick I actually taught him, I didn't get him involved in cards straight away, to be honest. The very first trick I taught him was dynamic coins. Which is the one where you've got a little stack of coins and you cover it up with a brass cap and they disappear and they jump somewhere else. And the reason I taught him that is it allowed me to make him understand a lot of different concepts in magic. Because if you actually think about what dynamic coins does, it makes coins jump from one place to another. So you learn about teleportation. It makes them change places. So you learn about transpositions. It makes them disappear. It makes them reappear. It makes them change. There's so much stuff that you can do with dynamic coins. And it also helps improve your motor skills, because although it's very easy to do, you've got to put the cap on the coins in just the right place. It also allows me to teach about gimmicks. It allows me to explain how you can do things in spectators' hands. So it was the perfect trick to kind of explain about all these concepts, because I was very keen when I taught Ryan magic. It wasn't just, hey, here's the trick, this is what you need to do. I wanted to understand why it works and how to make it effective, right? So dynamic coins was the perfect one for me. The other thing about dynamic coins, and really any trick that you teach your child, is you want to make it so that it's fairly easy. You don't want to make it ridiculously easy so that it's rubbish, but you want to make it fairly easy while still requiring a bit of practice, because you need them to understand that they have to practice in order to make the magic good, but you also want it to be really easy, because if it's really difficult and they get frustrated, they might get turned off it. So for me, the dynamic coins was the perfect starter, and then from there I went into flying coins, which is the one with the two cylinders, and it's a bit like flying eagles. It's got a slot at the bottom and it holds one coin back, because again I was thinking, well, that's going to allow me to talk to Ryland about the one ahead principle, which was something I really wanted to kind of explain to him, about how you can be one ahead and one behind. And that allowed me to bring up the concept of palming, because the thing with flying eagles is you can do it just as a straight thing, or you can make it a lot better by doing a vanish at the end of one coin. So as I was teaching him flying eagles, I taught him how to vanish a coin, and I taught him a finger palm vanish and a French drop. Those are the two vanishes I taught him at the beginning, I think. Now, the other thing that you need to understand when you're teaching a child magic, or at least in my opinion, is, like I say, I tried to keep away from playing cards. You want to try, at least initially, the first card trick I taught him was Svengali deck. Then I taught him a nudist deck, and then it kind of went on from there. But we did a couple of trick decks first of all, before we kind of delved into the stuff with regular cards. I didn't teach him a lot of self-working tricks. In fact, I still haven't taught him a great deal of self-working tricks with playing cards. I fooled him the other day with a key card, you know, which is crazy when you think about it. But it's just because the knowledge that Ryland has is the knowledge that he's either read in books, watched on downloads, or I've taught him. And because I've never actually taught him self-working tricks with a regular deck of cards, I've always taught him sleight of hand with cards, he doesn't know about key cards or stuff like that. He does now, but I fooled him with the key card principle. Anyway, you want to make sure that the tricks that you're teaching your child, they are really into, they're invested in. You don't want to teach them tricks that they find boring. And you can do that very easily by asking them, you know. So I said to Ryland, you know, when I taught him the first card trick, I was like, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the coin stuff or the card stuff? It's like, oh, I prefer the coin stuff. So then we started doing more stuff with sleight of hand. I very quickly went into sponge balls because he learned to coin vanish. So I taught him a sponge ball vanish. And then because he saw me, he went to one of my gigs and he saw me performing Pop Hayden's linking ring routine, right? And he's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I want to learn the linking rings. And so then I showed him the ninja rings. I did shoot out Gal's ninja ring. He's like, oh my God, that's amazing. I want to learn that. So at about the age of 3, maybe 4, he learned ninja rings, and he's been fascinated with rings ever since. So it wasn't until he was about 5 that he actually started learning card magic properly. So yeah, so the take home, make it nice and easy. All the stuff I mentioned works really, really well. If you're going to go down the card trick route, that's absolutely cool. I'd start off with a couple of easy gimmick decks, because that's really a good place to start. Simple stuff like when Ryland first got into magic, I taught him the jumping rubber band. And he does Crazy Man's handcuffs and stuff now, but I taught him jumping rubber band, and he loved that because he could have the band on his wrist and he'd be walking around with bands. He'd go to school and he'd just be doing this jumping rubber band all day. So jumping rubber band is great because it's got instant gratification. You know, it's really, really easy. The other thing that you can do, and I really highly recommend this, is teach. I did this at a very early age with Ryland. Teach your child how to do multiple outs. And do it in a very simple way. So Ryland, when he was younger, he was into Paw Patrol. So I got myself an envelope, and on the back of the envelope, I wrote, "You will pick Chase." I took a piece of paper, I folded it up, I put it inside, and I put on there, "You will pick Rocky." And I had 3, I got myself some Paw Patrol Top Trump cards or something. And I put and it was Rocky, it was Chase, and it was Rubble. And on the back of Rubble, I put a big X. So, and then I showed him the trick. I said, look, Ryland, I've got an envelope and I've got 3 different Paw Patrol characters in here. I've got Rocky, I've got Chase, and I've got Rubble. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to know which one you pick. You're going to pick one, I'm going to tell you right now, I know which one you pick. And he was like, no way. I said, well, honestly, I'll know. And he picked Chase, and I turned it round and I said, look, it says on the back of the envelope, you will pick Chase. He was blown away. And when I taught him that, he thought that was the coolest thing ever. Because it was something he could do straight away. He just knew that if somebody says this, you do this. If somebody says this, you do this. If somebody said this, you do this. But learning about multiple outs is a really important thing if you're wanting them to get into magic. So think about the principles behind the tricks that you're teaching them. Make it nice and easy. say, try to bring it into something that they're into. Like Ryland was into Paw Patrol, so I made it about Paw Patrol. If I was teaching him something now and I wanted him into it, I'd probably involve Doctor Who, wrestling, or something to do with Marvel. So I hope that helps. If you need anything more specific, just let me know. Okay, so the next question is by Mr. Harmon. He's back. Hey, Mr. Harmon. And he asks, what is a good source for Propless mentalism? Great question. And we're getting a lot of questions about mentalism on this channel. So on 5x5 on Monday, I've got a special guest that's coming onto the channel to talk about mentalism. He's going to be doing one of the sections in 5x5. So that's going to be very, very cool. But you know what? Propless mentalism is something I'm planning on doing an interview with. I'm going to be interviewing somebody about Propless mentalism. I actually got a really cool idea for a video where I'm going to have two mentalists. One of them's going to be arguing for Propless mentalism. One of them's going to be arguing for propped mentalism. I'm going to let everybody on the channel, the viewers, the subscribers, decide what they prefer, Propless or prop mentalism. I think that'd be a really cool thing to do. As a magician who does mental magic, I like the idea of Propless mentalism. I like the idea of just walking around and just being able to say, hey, let me do this. So yeah, I like the idea of Propless mentalism. I don't do any of it. I actually prefer propped mentalism when I'm at a gig, but I'm not getting to that now. I do, however, I have read some stuff on Propless mentalism. I have watched some stuff on Propless mentalism. I think it's very clever. This list, I've made a list here for you. I've been very organized with this. This list is by no means a comprehensive list. This is what I've seen that I've been particularly impressed with. So the first thing is Tequila Hustler by Mark Elsden. Now, if you've seen the Steve Della interview from Tuesday, Steve talks about Propless mentalism on there, and he talks about how he's not really a fan of Propless mentalism. Off camera, I spoke to him, and he said, well, the only Propless mentalism trick that he does is Mark Elsden's Tequila Hustler, which says a lot because Steve's not really into Propless mentalism at all. And I agree, Tequila Hustler is amazing. I've known Mark Elsden for many, many years. In fact, when I first learned to solve Rubik's Cube, it was because of Mark Elsden. I actually paid him. I drove all the way down to Wales where he lives, and I sat with him all day, and he taught me how to solve Rubik's Cube. I did a Rubik's Cube solving workshop with him. So there you go. So I've known Mark for years. Great guy, really great guy, very knowledgeable, both with magic and mentalism. And yeah, Tequila Hustler, great piece of Propless mentalism. That's the first one. I've got a list of 4 here for you. The second thing is Atlas Brokings. Now, if you know Atlas Brokings, he put out a thing many, many years ago called Train Tracking, which is really good. Train Tracking, it's very difficult to get hold of right now, but you can, if you look for it, you can find it. A lot of people say it is the quintessential book on Propless mentalism. Now, look for that, because if you're seriously into Propless mentalism, this is something that you want to get. In the meantime, however, while you're trying to find it, the other thing that you can do, Atlas Brokings actually did a Penguin Live. If you just go on Penguin and search Atlas Brokings, you'll see on there, Brookings, you can see on there, he did a whole Penguin Live on nothing but Propless mentalism, and it is phenomenal. It really is. It's one of those Penguin Lives where you just start watching it, and even if you're not going to do anything in it, you're just like, oh my gosh, this guy's so clever. This is absolutely awesome. Atlas is considered to be the man when it comes to Propless mentalism, so it's well worth checking his stuff out. So absolutely get the Penguin Live, and then you might want to consider looking for train tracking. Now, the other thing that you want to look into, and you can get this is available. Pete Turner, very clever mentalist, as you know. He does a lot of propless and propped mentalism. He put out an ebook called Real Time. Real Time. You can search it. Just search Real Time Pete Turner. It's available as a download. I think it's like £30. But he's got several different routines in there, some of which use props, some of which don't. And there's a routine in there which is just mind-blowing. It's called Phantom Dictionary Test. Now, what I want you to do is imagine right now that you're doing a book test with the dictionary. So you hand the dictionary out, you get them to think of a word, they close the dictionary, you tell them what the word is that they're thinking of. But now imagine doing that with no book, no prop, no dictionary, and it's all taking place in your imagination. Because that is what Pete Turner's done with the Phantom Dictionary Test. It's really great. It's well worth downloading that ebook. So I hope that helps. Those are the 4 things that I've seen that are really awesome. So you might want to check those out. But let me know in the comments if anybody's watching this. If you know a good source for Propless mentalism, let me know in the comments down below, because I'd probably like to watch it myself or read it myself. Right, there's another question now by Mr. Harmon. Again, thank you very much, buddy. Can you name some of your favourite effects that have come out this year? Well, I can, but I'm not going to. And the reason I'm not going to is I've been kind of planning out what I want to do over the Christmas period, because I want to kind of pre-record stuff for Christmas. I don't want to just not put videos out over Christmas because it's Christmas, but I don't want to be filming on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, so I'm going to film in advance. And I figured out that Christmas Day is a Friday, which is a rant day. However, I don't think it's appropriate to do a rant on Christmas Day, so I'm planning on doing something very special on Christmas Eve on the magic stuff, and I'm also planning on doing something very special on Christmas Day. And the thing that I'm doing on Christmas Day is I'm going to do a countdown of the 5 or 10, I haven't decided yet, but the 5 or 10 worst tricks to come out in 2020. And then on Boxing Day, rather than an honest trailer, I'm going to be talking about the 5 or 10 best tricks that have come out in 2020. So I'm going to wrap that up at the end of the year, because you never know. There might be something that comes out in the next month that will blow me away. And so I don't want to do the list just yet. But it's a really great question, and it's something that I am going to do at the end of the year. So look out for that. I'm not going to spoil it now by telling you now, but look out for it at the end of the year. So the next question is by Oliver Rauch. Hello, Oliver. Thanks very much for the question. Great questions last week. He said, you did go into this in the Q&A last week, which I did a little bit, but what really is the difference between mental magic and mentalism? Is it a difference in the trick or just how you present it? Can you perform any mentalism routine as mental magic? It's a great question, and really it's very difficult to say. I think it comes down to the performer. So it comes down to how you are as a performer. And I've talked about characterization on Q&As in the past, so I'm not really going to go into it now, but understanding your character is really important. You kind of have to be true to your character. And what I mean by that is, if I am a magician, which I am, if I present myself as a magician and I'm doing stuff like coins across, and I'm doing stuff like, you know, really heavy sleight of hand tricks with fancy cuts and one-handed shuffles, to then completely switch from that and go into, right, now I'm going to read your mind. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to think, and I go into kind of a Max Maven type thing. It's not very believable, right? Because here's this guy that was doing sleight of hand. Now he's suddenly saying he can read my mind. It's kind of a bit weird from a transition point of view, if that kind of makes sense. So it's about knowing your character. And I'll give you an example. Cold reading. Cold reading is something a lot of mentalists do. Or Q&A sessions is something else that a lot of mentalists do. You know, like Q&As, as in everybody in the audience writes down a question and puts them in a box, and then you take them out and you don't know who's asked it, and you look at the question and you answer the question, and oh no, you don't. Sorry, you take something out, you don't look at it, and you answer the question, and then you look at the question. You know, that sort of thing. That's something that as a magician I would never do, because that is pure out and out mentalism. If you're doing that sort of thing, you're presenting yourself as a mentalist, right? There are certain routines that you can present as mentalism, but you can also present them as mental magic. So, for example, I can do, you know, a mentalist could do a 15-minute act with a book test, right? And they could give a book out and really make it believable, so that as people leave the audience, leave the theatre or wherever it is that you're performing it, they will believe that you were able to extract that information out of their mind. As a magician, if I did a book test, I wouldn't make it believable at all. I would make it so that, you know, we're going to do something right now. What I want you to do is take this book, and I want you to open it up and have a look at a word in that book. Have you got the word? Right, okay, fantastic. Now you've got the word. I'm going to try and get the word off you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to picture the word in your head. Oh, fantastic. Okay, I think I've got... And it's subtle differences, but you can tell that I'm not really reading people's minds. And really, it's down to character. It's a very difficult question to answer, but it's really just down to character. And a lot of the time, like I've said in the past, I will select effects that fit my character. So I do keep away from a lot of mentalism. Executive Suite is a perfect example by Alec Azam. So Executive Suite is something that I've done quite a lot since we reviewed it on the show. And I just talk about, hey, I'm going to try and influence you. You know, I'm just going to try and influence you here. That's what I've been doing all the way along. You know, when you pick the card, I was influencing you to pick a card. Let's see if I can prove it to you, okay? We're going to make it very, very clear. I've got a hotel room key here. I'm going to put it down on the table. Now, I'm going to influence you, and you're not going to feel influenced. So it's kind of that sort of thing. I'm not telling people that I'm reading their minds. Again, it's all about character, and it's all about knowing who you are and the type of way that you perform. It's that simple. And knowing that the tricks that you do have to fit that character. Okay, so the next question is again by Oliver Rauch. Hey, buddy. What's your advice about transitioning between routines, particularly on stage or parlour? Do the tricks themselves flow into each other, theme-wise? Do you just go straight into introducing a different theme? Again, a really great question. And the answer to that is you have to work your show out. You can't just higgledy-piggledy. When you're putting a stage show together, you can't just higgledy-piggledy grab tricks and go, right, that's the running order, that'll work for me. There's certain tricks there's so many different factors that you need to take into consideration. Transitioning from one routine to the other is one consideration, but it's not the only consideration. Other conditions are the length of the routine, how you feel the routine will be perceived by the audience. So, for example, one thing that I do in my parlour show or in my stage show is and I think I've talked about this before, I do something called Life is a Box of Chocolates by Michael J. Fitch, which is very like a story deck, but you've got these big, massive cards, right? And you say that and each one of them's got a different chocolate bar on. And you say that what you're going to do is mix these cards up, and then you're going to give me 10 seconds to memorise the order, and I'm going to try and recite them one at a time, but I'm going to do it and construct a story at the same time, and every single the story has to use the chocolate bar in the order in which I'm memorizing them. And it sounds impossible, and then you tell the story and you're lifting up the chocolate bars one by one to do it. Amazing. It's a fantastic routine. It's a showstopper, but it would not work as an opening trick. It wouldn't work as an opening trick because it's too long. The audience need to be invested in my performance, first of all. They need to be invested in me. If I try and open with that routine, it's just not going to work, right? Likewise, I do a routine with slush powder. When I'm doing my cabaret show, a lot of the time I'll do a routine with slush powder, and it's all about pouring water into a cup and that sort of thing. I wouldn't do that routine as a closer. It's a great routine to do early on in the show, right? But it's not a closer. So it's about knowing where the routines fit, and then you flow from one routine into the other. So I'm going to give you an example. In my show, I do the suit jacket escape, which was put out by Bill Abbott. It's an amazing thing. It's like a handcuff escape where you escape out your suit jacket. Ridiculous premise. I literally built a career on that routine. I absolutely love it. Now, I do that fairly early on, right? So I come out, I do a warm-up, I do a quick routine to grab the audience's attention, and then I go into the suit jacket escape, and I need 2 people to come up and help me. And that's another thing that you need to consider. If you've got volunteers that are coming up to help you, you need to establish a bit of credibility first. If you come out on stage and say, right, come out and help me, you're going to have some people that are a bit nervous about doing that. You kind of need to do something first to warm the audience up. But then I bring 2 people up to help me, right? So they're standing right next to me. I'm doing the suit jacket escape. And I know the next routine I'm going to go into after the suit jacket escape, I'm going to go into this thing with slush powder, and I need a volunteer to help me on stage. So rather than having those 2 guys sit down and then getting someone else to come up, I go, at the end of the suit jacket, I go, fantastic, give a big round of applause for John and Peter, everybody. Come on, let's give it up for John and Peter. And I just look at John and I say, John, thank you so much for helping me. Let me shake your hand. You can go and sit down. Peter, thank you so much for helping me. You're not going anywhere, mate. You stay right where you are. And you can see the guy go, huh, and the entire audience laughing because they've already bought into my character. They find it really funny that I'm keeping this guy on stage. And I go, no, the reason is I give a prize out to the best volunteer of the show, the person who helps me and does the best job. They win a prize, and you, Peter, you've won this prize. Which is funny. It's a funny premise because I've literally just started the show and I'm giving this prize out, and normally the guy's reaction is like, oh. I'm like, okay, so the prize is you get to perform a trick in front of everybody on your own. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Peter. And I just step off. And it's a very funny premise. I go, no, you've obviously never done this before, let me help you. And I go into the next routine. So that's an example of not having 2 routines, transitioning from one to another, and knowing that I'm going to transition from one to the other, how I can do it in a very seamless way. So what you want to do, the old school magicians back in the day, they used to have a box on stage with them, and they go, right, for my first trick, put it away. For my next trick, put it away. for my next trick, put it away. And it'd just be like a series of tricks just performed with no setup and no payoff, right? And I've seen that happen an awful lot. I really have. What you want to do, and I've seen it at competitions. I've seen it in close-up gigs. But I went to a restaurant once, and this magician came over to me. He didn't realize I was a magician, and he came over to me, and this was his act. I swear to God, he put down 4 packs of cards on the table, and he went, "Hi, I'm the magician. Let me show you a trick." He opened up the first deck, and he did an invisible deck. Then he put it to the left-hand side. Then he took a next deck, and he opened it up, and he did brainwave, or the blank one, the rough and smooth thing where the blanks turn into pictures. He put that down. Then he picked up another deck and he did something else. And he just literally had 4 trick decks, and all he was doing is just going through these trick decks one at a time. And I'm like, this is just terrible. That's the example of not knowing how to transition, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that's what the old school magicians used to do. For my next trick, for my next trick. What you want to do is you want to try and make it so that everything flows as much as possible. So you're taking the audience on a kind of theatrical journey where there's ebbs and there's flows. And the other thing is, a very good friend of mine, 2 friends of mine actually, John and Pam, who were very heavily involved in something called the British Magical Society. They took me under their wing when I first got into magic, and they always said to me, you can't be at a 10 all the time, because I was constantly trying to keep people at a 10. It's like, rah, 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 high energy, you're just going to beat them up. So what you need to do is you need to have ups and downs and ebbs and flows, but you need to be, it's one seamless performance from beginning to end with no stop and no start, if that kind of makes sense. So even though you're doing a series of tricks, it doesn't feel like it from the audience's point of view. And the way I go from suit jacket escape, into the slush powder routine is one example. Another example is you could do, so for example, this isn't something I do, but let me give you an example. If you do a spike routine where you're smashing your hand down on the spike, you've also got that routine with cans, where you open up the cans and you shake one up and one fizzes. You could, now I wouldn't recommend doing this because it's 2 tricks that are very similar, but just as an example, you could do the can thing, right? And shake up the can and have somebody come up and help you, and you work out which can is fizzy, and you end up, missing that can out, and you open up the fizzy can at the end and it goes everywhere. I think it's a Sean Hayden routine based on a Paul Harris routine. You could then transition from that to the spike, or something like, John Allen's pain game. You could transition by saying, now that was pretty impressive, but let's be honest, there was no danger there, was there? There was no time where I was actually going to get injured. However, now we're going to take this to the next level. And it almost feels like it's the same trick, right? It almost feels like it's the same trick. But now the audience are even more invested because they've got the premise, and now you've introduced this spike. So that's another way that you can transition. Another way, if you want to think about this, how can you go from one routine into another routine, into another routine, into another routine? So when I do the Phantasmagoria show with Steve, which we talked about on his interview, and we even played a little trailer for it, I think, the whole premise is magic versus mentalism. So the setup between tricks makes sense, because the whole idea is I'm doing a magic trick, Steve's doing a mentalism trick, I'm doing a magic trick, Steve's doing a mentalism trick. But even in that case, it's not a case of I perform, then Steve performs, then I perform, then Steve performs. There's a transition between each one, and the tricks have been laid out in such a way that they almost link into each other, if that kind of makes sense. If you are going to go into a routine where there's literally no way to transition it, what you want to do is you want to give yourself a strong hook line. So, for example, if you were doing, I don't know, something like fiber optics, and you finish fiber optics, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and now you want to go into a Rubik's Cube routine, because I did that on my Zoom show. I think when I did I did a video on how to construct a Zoom show, and I watched it back the other day, and I went from fiber optics into a Rubik's Cube routine, and there was no obvious transition. So what I did there is I said, right, okay, now that's all really impressive, but let me explain something to you. Every single magician has a signature trick, a trick that they do that very few other magicians do. Who here would like to see my signature trick? And so what I've done here is I've created a very strong hook line, and it's almost like I transition from one routine into the other, by saying, well, hang on a second, that's all well and good, but would you like to see this? And you are right. Transitioning from one routine into the other is something that you need to give a lot of thought about. And then the only other piece of advice I can give you on this is have a lot of stage rehearsal time. I've seen some terrible magic acts, and you can tell that they've never really worked on stage before. They've only done close-up and then they've gone and sort of worked on stage. And when you do close-up, you practice in your bedroom, right? And you might practice on friends, and then you go out and you perform in the real world, and that's fine. On stage, the most important thing is to actually have full stage rehearsals, because the first thing that you know, especially if you're working with big illusions or bigger props, is you need to know where everything is, and you need to know how to get that thing into the right place. So where is the crystal casket going to be? Where's the sub trunk going to be? Where's the split press going to be? Where is this prop going to be? Okay, I'm hanging this above the stage. How am I going to get to this? And I think I did a video on this recently. I think I did a rant on this where I went and watched a magician once, and it was obvious that he had no, he'd done no rehearsal. He'd done no rehearsal, because he had this thing where he had a box suspended above the stage, and he had a box there for the entire thing, and he wanted to get it down. So he was like, oh, I need a chair. I need a chair to get this down. Not that he did, because it was hanging low enough to grab, but by the by, I need a chair. So he said to his stagehand, can you grab a chair for me from backstage? And the reason he needed that chair is because he had a thing at the back of the chair so he would be able to do a switch. So he took this envelope out of the box and he switched it behind the chair. So he needed a particular chair brought out. But the problem is, the trick that he'd done beforehand was a chair test. And he had 4 identical chairs literally right next to him on the stage. And then he said to his stagehand, can you bring me a chair out? It made no sense. Because the chair, why are you asking for a chair to come out when you've already got 4 chairs there that are identical to the chair that's just been brought out? It makes no sense. So that's the sort of thing that you realise when you do a full stage rehearsal. You have to think about where the props are. What am I going to have on stage? What needs to happen here? So the chair test isn't going to be a good thing to do before this, because there's no reason for me to bring another chair out. So maybe I need to shift the chair test somewhere else and then move those chairs away, and then I can bring that out, and maybe that will work. Do you see what I mean? So it's a very long answer to this question. I'm very sorry about that, but it's something I feel really passionate about. But yeah, ultimately, transitioning between routines is really, really important. Okay, so the next question I'm going to address, but I'm not going to answer right now. The question is, how did you find your character? What was your journey? Did you try out different personas? Have different phases of performance style? Right now, I definitely know what magic and mentalism I do not want to perform, but I'm still left with so many options and I'm having trouble deciding. I'm going to answer this on a magic stuff. I'm planning on doing the magic stuff very soon, where I'm going to talk about characterization. I'm also going to have some special guests that are going to be talking about characterization as well, because it is something that comes up on the show over and over and over and over again. So I am going to be talking about that. I'll talk about my own personal journey, because I've made a lot of mistakes when it comes to characterization, and those have cost me and cost me badly. And I'm also going to get other people to come on and talk about characterization as well. I don't want to address it right now, because it's literally going to take about 30 minutes, which is why I want to do it as a magic stuff. But please look out for it. Watch the magic stuff. So it'll be on before Christmas, probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. But it's something that I'm going to be addressing. And as I say, I'm going to get a few special guests on as well to talk about characterization as well. Okay, so the next question is by Mr. Harmon. How do you create unique and clever gimmicks to help you achieve an effect? Man, that's an open-ended question if there ever was one. How do you create unique and clever gimmicks to help you achieve an effect? Well, really it comes down to, first of all, what is the effect that you want to create? Because you can't really come up with a gimmick and then have no purpose for it. You need the effect first of all. And the perfect example, Chop, my routine Chop, okay? So in Chop, I knew I wanted to create a chop cup routine, but with a regular cup, because I'm all about organic. When I release products, Keymaster, Chop, Love Cards, a lot of my stuff is organic, or it's designed to look like it's organic, right? That's really, really important to me. So I wanted to create a chop cup routine where there was no chop cup. And I was thinking, well, okay, if I need a chop cup routine, I'm going to need balls, right? But it'd be weird to pull a ball out of my pocket if I'm using a regular cup. How am I going to get around that? Okay, I want to use a note. And if I'm using a note or a bill, I want to have it go into lemon in the end. So I kind of, over the course of a week or two, realized what I wanted to achieve with Chop. It was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. How am I going to make this happen? And I had a few different ideas for gimmicks, and then I eventually settled on the gimmick that I used, which I went and had made, and it worked perfectly, and then I put the routine together. But I couldn't have just come up with the idea for the Chop gimmick without knowing the routine that I wanted to have in place, or without knowing what I wanted to achieve. So it's important to know what the effect is that you're wanting to achieve first of all, and then you can create the gimmick. Another example, and I can only use my own personal examples. I'm sorry I'm talking about my tricks, but it's really the best way. I released many years ago a routine called Quarantine, right? Which was designed to be like an Omni deck. At the time when I created it, everybody was doing Omni deck. People still do today. And I wanted to do an Omni deck style finish, but without actually having an Omni deck. And so I had the idea of thinking, so I thought, well, how can I do Omnideck without Omnideck? And then I thought about Solid Deception, and I was like, well, yeah, but that Paul Harris has done that. What else can I do? What else can I do? And I was sitting at World Magic Shop, and I was looking at their machine that they use to cellophane the props together, and I was like, hang on a minute. And I asked one of them to cellophane a deck of cards up for me, to shrink wrap a deck of cards. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is perfect. If I could end up in a situation where I've got a deck shrink wrapped, well, that'd be great. So I had my ending, which is a shrink wrap deck. And then I had to go through the process of, well, how am I going to, why is it going to be shrink wrapped? It only makes sense if there's a reason it's shrink wrapped. And then I was like, okay, so how are we going to make this work? How are we going to have this shrink wrapped? Oh, I know, I could open a deck of cards and take the shrink wrap off, and we could use that. Okay, cool. But wouldn't it be really cool if the deck ended up... So I ended up having the box shrink wrapped, I ended up having the deck shrink wrapped, and the whole routine was built around there. And the gimmicks that I needed to achieve that were created after I came up with the original idea. Now, I could go through every single one of my tricks that I've ever created, and I could kind of break it down like this. But the point I'm trying to make is, you can't just create a gimmick. You just can't. You can't just create a gimmick. What you can do, however, is you can think of a routine and then try and think of a gimmick that creates that. But, and here's the important thing, don't just create a gimmick for gimmick's sake. I've seen routines that have been marketed where it uses a gimmick, but it doesn't need to use a gimmick. It doesn't need to use a gimmick. You can do the same thing without gimmicks, and it's kind of like solving a problem that doesn't even exist, you know, and some creators will create a product and rush it to market because they think that this is going to be the next big thing, but they don't need a gimmick in the first place, right? So that's very, very important for you to understand. Only create a gimmick if a gimmick is needed. Now, I will tell you the one exception to this. The one exception is that I brought out a trick many years ago called the Mirage coin set. Which was a collection of gimmicked coins. It was a copper silver flipper. It was a silver shell that fit over the copper silver flipper perfectly, creating just a silver coin. You also got a regular copper, a regular silver, and a regular Chinese coin that all fit inside the shell as well. And this Mirage coin set, I had the idea for the Mirage coin set before I had any routines in mind, because I was using a flipper a lot. I bought out my DVD flipped out, and I was using a copper silver coin a lot. I was like, wouldn't it be really cool to have a flipper that's copper and silver? So when you flick it up in the air, either the copper or the silver disappears. I was like, oh, that'd be amazing. And so I had the idea for the flipper, and I was like, yeah, but if we had a shell that went over it, that'd be really good. I didn't have any routines for it because I didn't have the coins. I couldn't really kind of put it all together, if that made sense. So I had the idea for the gimmicks. I had the gimmicks created, and then I came up with like 15 routines for it. So that's probably the one exception. So I'll be honest with you, there is one exception. But even then, I kind of knew what the gimmick would be, if that kind of made sense. I had, the idea came about because I was playing with a flipper coin. I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if we could have a copper silver flipper. But really, this is all about creativity, man. This is all about creativity. You want to look at the routines, you want to look at ideas, come up with ideas. Get yourself a notepad, constantly write stuff down in the notepad. If you've got an idea, write it in a notepad. I've got like 3 notepads. I've got one notepad for YouTube ideas, for ideas for this YouTube channel. I've got one for YouTube ideas for the new channel to do with marketing that's launching next year. And I've got one for tricks that I'm creating, or ideas, or presentational ideas, or anything to do with me as a performer. So I've got 3 notepads that I carry around with me. I also have stuff on my notes page all the time. Just write down all your ideas and then reverse engineer it and see if a gimmick comes to mind. That's probably the best piece of advice I can give you. Right, so the next question is by The Deck 52. I think it's the first time you've asked a question, buddy. Thanks very much. Question for next week, Craig. Can you tell us the camera equipment you're using to shoot your videos on for the channel? Well, when I first started the channel, I had no budget. I don't really have a budget now, to be honest. But when I first started the channel, I had no budget, so we were filming them on iPhone 12s. Two different iPhone 12s set up at different angles and filming on two iPhone 12s. We've just recently leveled up the channel, so to speak. So we've just recently invested in sound equipment, and well, actually, after the first couple of weeks, we invested in lighting equipment. So I've got umbrellas with lights on all over the place, and sound equipment. But now we're leveling up the cameras as well. We've got two cameras that we're going to be using to get more crisper shots and so on and so forth. And I think that's the important thing when you're putting YouTube videos together. I speak to people that are wanting to create videos for YouTube, and what they say is, oh yeah, I'm going to start my YouTube channel, I'm going to start producing videos, but first of all, I just need to get the right equipment. I need to get the right this, I need to get the right that, I need to do this, I need to do that. And I think people sometimes, they just make excuses as to why they're not doing a video. And you can do that. You can make excuses to yourself. You can justify why you're not doing something, right? You can go, oh, I'm not going to do this because of this. I'm not going to do this because of this. Well, let me tell you right now, I've got a friend called Graham Todd. He runs a marketing company called the Spaghetti Agency. I'm going to get him as an interview on the new channel in the new year. And Todd, he turns around and he says, the video that you've made that you don't think is the best quality is better than the video that you never made. You know, and when's the best time to start a YouTube channel? Yesterday. When's the next best time? Right now. So yeah, if you haven't got the best equipment, it doesn't matter. Build an audience, start creating videos, start putting it out there, create an audience, and then level up as you go. Now, I know I get lots of questions about YouTube. I am going to be doing a video on how to, there's going to be a couple of videos on YouTube. I'm learning all of the time. I spend hours every single day learning about YouTube, and I'm learning new stuff every single day and implementing it into the channel. And what you can do as a magician or a performer, you have certain advantages that you don't have as another YouTuber. So I know that a lot of you guys are interested in that, and that is something that I'm going to be talking a lot about. I just want to get it right in my head. I don't script a lot of these videos. I know what I'm going to be talking about, but I've got a very free-flowing style. However, I am going to be kind of making notes on what I'm going to be talking about with the YouTube stuff, because I want to get precise, and it is very, very precise. But yeah, in answer to your question, we've leveled up now, but when we started filming them on iPhones. Not this one, this is an older iPhone, but you know, one of the new iPhone 12s. Yeah, there's a lot you can do. Let's be honest, there's a lot you can do with iPhones. iPhones just get better, not just iPhones, but smartphones in general. They get better every single day, right? Every single time a new one comes out, the camera's better, the quality's crisper. But there's still stuff you can do with the camera. So you want to level up eventually, but it's better to just start off right now with what you've got and then build up to it. So that's it, guys. That's another Q&A in the bag. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much for watching. Please ask loads of questions. I love the Q&As. It gives me a chance to answer the questions that you guys want answering. So these Q&As are only good if you ask the questions. Ask them down below on any video over the course of the next week, and I promise you I'll answer them. Just so you know, I answer the videos on I create this video on a Thursday. Okay, it's Thursday today because I need to edit it and I need to get it all scheduled for Sunday. So if you ask a question on Friday, it's not going to get answered until the following week. I apologize for that. That's just kind of the way it is. So yeah, make sure you ask the questions. Thanks very much for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Don't forget, I've got another episode of 5x5 episode 2 coming out on Monday. Thank you so much for all of the support with 5x5. I was really excited about it as a concept. You guys seem to really dig it, which is cool. And I've got an even better one lined up for episode 2. So check that out on Monday, and I'll see you soon. My name's Craig from Magic TV.